The facts speak for themselves, and numbers don't lie. While the US is criticizing others over greenhouse gas emissions, it has to face the fact that it is the biggest historical emitter. A recent CNN report says historical emissions are closely linked to current levels of global warming, and the US has emitted almost twice as much CO2 as China since 1850. But over the years, Western media reports tend to paint China as a major climate change culprit, so much so that some start to feel embarrassed. Recently, British Morning Star has issued an editorial entitled "Scapegoating China over climate change is craven and inaccurate." The article points out that the US carbon emissions per head stood at 15.2 tons, more than double that of China. More striking, it says, is the speed of China's development of zero-carbon technologies. China generates more solar and wind power than the EU, and has almost as many electric cars as the US and the EU combined. Indeed, China, still a developing country, has risen to the climate change in a manner befitting its current status. In one of its most grievous endeavors, Beijing aims to peak its carbon emissions by 2030 and achieve carbon neutrality by 2060. That means China has to move from carbon peak to carbon neutrality faster than any country in history. It will take the EU 71 years, the US 43 years, and Japan 37 years to achieve the target, while China leaves itself with merely 30 years. In just 30 years. Will China honor the pledge in such a short period of time? By the end of 2019, China had delivered on its 2020 climate action target ahead of schedule. China's carbon intensity in 2020 was 48.4%, less than that in 2005, more than fulfilling its commitment of a 40 to 45% reduction. For the new targets, steady steps are being taken. China promised to increase wind and solar power capacity to more than 1,200 gigawatts by 2030. By the end of 2020, the figure stood at about 500 gigawatts, as the country more than doubled its construction of new wind and solar power plants in 2020 from a year earlier. China also aims to raise the share of non-fossil fuels in its primary energy consumption to 25% by 2030. In 2020, the share stood at 15.9%. The installed capacity of non-fossil energy power generation in China reached 980 million kilowatts, accounting for 44.7% of the total installed capacity. Electricity generated by non-fossil energy reached 2.6 trillion kilowatt-hours, representing more than one-third of the power consumption of the country. China's green endeavors have spanned various sectors, including construction, transport, and the manufacturing of new energy vehicles. In 2035, China plans to make all new vehicles sold eco-friendly, and is racing towards that goal. At the end of 2020, an important milestone was reached when 4.92 million NEVs were running on China's roads. Over the first 8 months of 2021, Chinese consumers bought 1.79 million electric vehicles, up 194% from the same period last year. All these figures tell one thing, that China is translating its pledges into concrete actions on climate change. So back to the question, will China deliver on its new targets on time? The answer lies in the numbers.